The dark cosmos. Stay cosmic. From the sky, the outpost looked abandoned. Some of its buildings had burnt down. Spotlights from our Vulcan shone onto the ground, but revealed no life. No visuals on any colonists. Lieutenant Monroe asked, "Hodge, are you scanning?" "Yes, ma'am," I replied. "But we're too high up to detect life signs." "Anders, take us lower," I interrupted. "Sorry, ma'am, but that would take us below safe height for this terrain." Through the headset, I heard Anders sigh. God forbid we'd never not follow the rules, Hodge." It was not said in jest. The last year had been nothing but dumb pranks and snark at me for following the rules. Lieutenant Monroe said, "Fine. Take us as close as you can to the relay station and put us down. Remain scanning, Hodge." "Yes, ma'am." I suspected the atmosphere was interfering with the scanner. In our urgency, we'd arrived on the planet during a heavy storm and its night cycle. The whole outpost was pitch black. The power must have been knocked out after the SOS was sent from the relay station. The outpost was the last one on PX-51, a mining planet, the briefing said. 86 hours ago, an SOS had been sent out with no response after that. The hope had been the message was a mistake. A dumb miner had drilled through a power cable or something. Though, as we assessed the situation from the ship, that looked a less likely outcome. "Gear up, everyone. Suited and booted," the lieutenant said. We all made checks on our weapons and equipment. Then one of the team gave everyone the once-over. Everyone except me. My check was a brief pat and a shrug. This was typical from the rest of the team. Last year, I reported one of our squad, Private Lucas Collins, for disobeying a direct order. My testimony was used in a court-martial that got Collins discharged. Collins didn't last long in civilian life. What he did was not on me, no matter what everyone else thought, though they reminded me whenever they could. "Good to go," Monroe said. "Check mine." "You're not staying with the ship, Lieutenant?" "Negative. Hodge, update me on the scan." "Not clear. I'll be able to pick up more when we're on the ground." To the rest of the squad, she said, "We go in cautious, check the relay station. Hopefully our caller will be waiting for us there. We don't know what happened, so we go in frosty. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am!" we called in unison. Monroe nodded and took her place by the entrance. The Vulcan came to the ground with a small jolt. The lieutenant gave the word. The door opened, and we went out in formation to the outpost. With the dark night and the storm, a strange dark red color hung over the ground and the buildings. Light from behind us cast our shadows onto the muddy ground. "Scanning!" I called. I heard Anders say, "No smoke! Yet these buildings are burnt down. Whatever happened here happened way before the SOS, Lieutenant." "I have signs," I said. "Between 10 or 20. Then the readings flickered in and out from the interference. "There might be more." How far? A couple of 100 meters. What about the relay station, Private? I turned my scanner in the direction of the building behind the Vulcan. It was a squat metal building and looked untouched compared to the rest of the outpost. 1, I said. 1 life sign inside. Monroe gave an order. Ignore the other life signs for now. We'll get to the relay station and assess the situations there. We moved out, keeping in tight formation. On the scanner, the life signs around us were building in number and moving closer towards us. My foot caught on something, and I landed face down in the mud. Fucking dumbass, Hodge, I heard through my headset. Hold up, we got a body. I quickly got back up and saw I had tripped on the outstretched arm of a corpse. It had been a man, its mouth open in a scream. A light illuminated the terrible slashes on its face and body. Keep moving, Monroe ordered. Quickly! We stepped up the pace, seeing more bodies littering the ground, all mutilated. One was missing its eyes and was holding onto mining equipment that looked like it had driven into the side of its own head. People spotted, ma'am. Due east. A call went up. Though the group were in the distance, I could see their clothes were in tatters and rippling against their scrawny bodies in the wind. Keep moving, the lieutenant said. Heavy storage crates blocked the entrance to the relay station. We tossed those out of the way to fully reveal the door. There was a keypad to the side of the door. Someone hotwire the door and get us in. Everyone else on point. We took a defensive position, a semicircle facing away from the relay station, guns drawn at the figures beginning to emerge from the darkness. The lieutenant called. Declare your intentions and we'll lower our weapons. Ma'am? What? The door, it won't open. It looks like it was welded shut from the inside. Shit, Monroe hissed. The colonists were now in range to see their faces. Some expressions were blank, some snarled. All of them looked gaunt and emaciated, but still carried heavy mining tools. We need to find a way in. Stick together. Work our way around. We began to move, and as we did, so did they. Some rushed straight at us, howling with animalistic rage. We fired at those that got close, but even seeing their number fall, they didn't stop. They came at us in mindless waves. Around the rear of the building was an external open elevator that went straight to the roof. Can that take us all? It's going to have to! Monroe shouted. A path was cleared. A tech opened up the power panel to get the thing working. Jesus! They won't stop coming! Dozens lay dead in our path. But still, crowds of living colonists surrounded us. Peterson screamed as she got hit by a sonic drill that had been flung at her head. We pulled her up and onto the elevator. It was a tight fit getting the whole squad on. You want to do the right thing and jump off, Hodge? Anders said. The elevator took us up, not without strain, and the crazed colonists tried to jump at us, even holding on to the edge of the elevator as it took us up. I stamped on one's fingers and they fell back to the ground. They got up again as if it hadn't even affected them. "What the hell are these crazy hicks drinking?" Anders called. The elevator stopped at roof level, and we all stepped off. "Hodge, give me another life sign reading." Interference was still affecting it, but the result was very clear. 1 life sign close. Weapons were aimed at the door that led inside. The door slowly opened, and a man emerged. He was not dressed like the colonists. He was in uniform. Our uniform. Even in the dark, recognition ran through the team. Anders said, "Oh my God, is that Leyland?" "Am I glad to see you?" He looked much older since I had last seen him. A thick black beard with streaks of silver covered his lower face. Despite this non-regulation appearance, I was pleased to see him remember to salute the lieutenant. "Ma'am," he said. "Private Leyland, last surviving member of Alpha Team." Someone nearby said, "What the hell are we doing here if they already sent Alpha Team?" We lowered our weapons and Leyland approached, beaming with joy. Or at least he was, until he saw me. The smile disappeared. He took a swing at me. I stepped back, and a couple of the others grabbed him. Monroe shouted, "Private, cool it! I promised I'd kick your ass the next time I saw you." Leyland spat at me. "For what you did to Collins." "Leyland, stand down!" Leyland glared at me until his body language changed. The others loosened their hold. "Sorry, ma'am," he said, and cleared his throat. "I knew Lucas Collins. I knew his family." "That does not matter right now," she said to him. "What I need right now is for you to tell me what the hell is going on." "Yes, ma'am." "We clear?" "Yes, ma'am." "Okay," Monroe said. "Take us inside." He nodded. "This way." He turned around and went through the door into the stairwell. Monroe looked back at us all and nodded for us to follow. I felt a not-so-gentle nudge in the ribs as someone went by. It was not my fault what Lucas Collins did. He disobeyed an order. That mission had been a success, but that didn't mean that any of us are above our orders. They are there for a reason, a purpose. Without orders or rules, there's nothing. It's our lives to follow rules and orders. Lucas Collins didn't follow his. I spoke against him. He was discharged for it. That he took his life after that was not on me. It wasn't on me at all. Leyland had turned one of the rooms in the relay station into something like a living area. There was a sleeping bag, a small heater, and empty food pouches littered across the floor. He'd managed to seal the building and rig up a backup generator. With the main power gone, I had no idea what the range of the comms were. he told us. I didn't know if anybody would hear me after, nobody came for us. The lieutenant tried to talk, but Anders interrupted. We didn't know Alpha Team were even here. Leyland looked confused for a moment before shaking his head. I shouldn't be surprised. Strictly need to know, Lieutenant? Lieutenant Monroe shrugged. You know how it is. All of the team were tightly packed into this small room. I sat at the back by myself, wiping mud from my armor. Leyland said to the rest of the squad, 6 months ago, this outpost went dark. We, Alpha Team, went in. It went bad. I've been here 6 months waiting for somebody to pick me up. It was need to know, the lieutenant said. We didn't know what was here or what had happened. So they waited until I sent an SOS before sending in more canaries for the coal mine. The squad were not happy. But what could the lieutenant have done? Broken the confidentiality of the mission? Perhaps the confidentiality could have included us, the Omega Team. After all, we were the team heading in. Enough of this, the lieutenant said. We found you. We've seen the situation. We need to go. It won't be that easy. Leyland sighed. Did you come down in a raptor? Vulcan. Damn it, he said. Thicker hull on a raptor. When we, the ones who were left, tried to take off in our Vulcan, man, they just tore it to shreds. That mining stuff they use did enough damage to the Vulcan we'd have all been decompressed into mist the moment we hit atmosphere. I spoke up. Couldn't you repair it? Leyland's dark eyes glared across at me. Haven't you been paying attention, Hodge? The moment we're out in the open, those bastards are swarming all over us. Alpha Team may be the best of the fucking best, but we can't beat sheer numbers. Anders said, What happened to all the miners? All that drilling drive them crazy? Leyland hesitated. Under the dim lights, I could see just how pale and drawn his face had become. Since I didn't have a lot to do here other than repairs, he said, I and a couple of others dug into the computers and the logs to see what went down. What he told us was confused and uncertain, but a story of what happened began to emerge. The mining surveys had come up with a cave deep under the ground. Either by accident or design, they tunneled an opening to it. What accounts there were reported that there was something in that cave. Maybe a creature, animal, or alien. The few who saw it said there was something living there, Leyland said. But every single one of them gouged their eyes out when they came out. Every single one of them. Anyone who went close to the cave opening, Leyland told us, went into a rage, attacking and breaking anyone or anything that came close. Before long, this madness or virus or whatever spread above ground. Colonists and miners attacking buildings and machinery. Gomez had a theory. Since they were united attacking us, they must recognize who had this madness and who didn't, and only attack those who didn't. But Gomez, the son of a bitch, decided he had to know what was down in the mines. Took Hadley and Jones with him. Gomez came back. Don't know how, since his eyes were missing. Hadley and Jones never came back. Leyland shook his head. Had to put him down. Goddamn idiot. I said, "Did he say what he saw?" It was raving madness. Something about how nothing mattered. Everything was a lie. Madness. A little chill went over me. Lieutenant Monroe called us to order. We needed to get off this planet. Leyland replied, "If they get near the Vulcan with anything that can punch a hole in it, we're better off waiting for backup." "Negative. We go today. How do we stop them from getting to the ship?" Anders said, "I'm not letting them touch my ship. She's my baby." "Then we get them away, distract them." "Hey," she said, "maybe Hodge could lead them away. You like that, Hodge?" "That's enough, Private," Monroe snapped. Leyland said, "A distraction's not a bad idea. Lead them somewhere and double back to the ship." "You know the outpost. Is there anywhere that works best?" Leyland brought up a map on the computer. "It's possible, but there's not many points where we can get a clear distance between us and them." "What about that?" Monroe pointed. "That's the mine, ma'am." "Can't we take them in there? Blow a tunnel and trap them in?" "I don't think you want to go in there. It's..." "Could we double back once we're in?" Leyland hesitated, then said, "It's possible. There's another exit on the other side of the mine. Might bring us out closer to the Vulcan." "Good. If we can thin their numbers whilst we're in there, all the better for us to get off this rock." Monroe nodded. "One other problem, Lieutenant." "Yes?" "What's down there?" Leyland said. "Whatever is there. We don't want to go anywhere near it." She nodded. "Understood. We lead them into the mine and head for the other exit. Leyland, Haywood, let's plan the route." The storm had not lit up whilst we had been inside. The dust blown in gave the place a deep red shade over everything. Even the heavy raindrops looked like blood. Some of the squad were starting to get unnerved. Most of the colonists were still gathered around the station, though, by my scanning, a few of them had gone somewhere else, hopefully not our Vulcan. Grenades were tossed into the crowd to get their attention. Once on the ground, we made our way through the burnt outpost toward the mine entrance, the blue lights from our headsets illuminating the husks of buildings and faces of the colonists. There was nothing but rage and madness in them. No humanity. The mine entrance was a long, wide tunnel that sloped downwards into darkness. We went down into it with no light but our torches. The frantic sound of the colonists followed us. We could hear their bare feet slapping against rock as they raced at us. The tunnel led to a hub with elevators going down to different levels. There was no time to exactly set the explosives. The colonists weren't slowing. They tumbled and fell over each other to reach us. The team did the best they could whilst the rest tried to hold the colonists off. "Take cover!" was sounded. There was little time. I ran as the entrance tunnel came down. A cloud of dust knocked me off my feet. As the dust began to settle, the call to sound off came through the headset. Once we were all accounted for, and the colonists who had made it in with us were dealt with, I cleared the room from the scanner to check the situation. "Do you think we got them all?" Looking at my scanner, I said, "Hard to tell through all the rock." Monroe said, "Let's hope it was enough." With the main entrance blocked, we planned to head down to the 3rd level and make our way across to the emergency exit that took us up to the other side of the outpost. The elevators in the mine looked old-fashioned. They were thin metal boxes with grates acting as doors that had to be pulled across for the elevator to move. "Manual, not electric," Leyland told us, "in case the power went out." After less than half the team were in the elevator, it creaked and groaned under the weight of us and our equipment. "We'll have to do this some at a time," Monroe said. "We don't want it coming down on us." I was the last in the group to take the trip down. We got inside and rattled our way down further into the darkness. "Imagine getting on this every day," Anders said. "No wonder they all went crazy." We assembled with the rest of Omega Team, and I commenced scanning. It wasn't what we hoped. I told Monroe, "There are people down here." "Shit! Everyone stay alert. We don't know what's down here. Leyland, you got the map?" "Yes, ma'am." "Take us through." We commenced our journey through the pitch-black tunnels. Without our lights, we weren't able to see anything at all. There was no noise other than the heavy padding of our boots and the beeping from my scanner. After an hour of walking, we came to a large area where the tunnels branched in different directions. Monroe gave the call to take 5. Life signs appeared on my scanner and disappeared, like they were following us, but hiding out of view. The lieutenant called me over. "Is there anything down this way?" "I think so." "Leyland, is that the way we're headed?" "Sure is," he replied. "Okay, you two with me. We can get a further reading." Leyland said, "Shouldn't we all go together?" "Negative. We only need to get a clearer scan. Come on." Leyland primed his weapon, and we headed further into the tunnel. We came to an area that led into a larger tunnel. Lieutenant Monroe said, "Leyland, with me. Hodge, wait here." "Yes, ma'am." "Are you sure?" Leyland asked. "Am I being unclear?" came the reply. "Lead the way, Private." There was a short pause of hesitation before Leyland complied. He walked ahead into the dark. I felt the lieutenant grab my wrist. She hissed under her breath. "You hear anyone coming, you whistle. Understood?" "Ma'am?" "Understood." "Yes, ma'am." "Good." she let go of my wrist and went after Leyland. I watched the lights from their helmets get further away. I stood alone in the darkness, turning around to make sure I wasn't being approached from any direction. I watched the lieutenant and Leyland's signs become more distant before stopping. The silence was broken by a gunshot. Adrenaline kicked in, and I ran towards where the lieutenant and Leyland were. The light from my torch found the lieutenant first. She was stood, gun drawn. "Are you okay?" I looked down to see what was at her feet. It was Leyland, a bullet in his head. "Lieutenant?" Only then did she look at me. "When they ask, you'll say he had whatever the colonists have," she said. "You'll say you saw him attack me." That's an order, Private," she said. "He's dead?" "I had to," she said with little regret. "My orders. Alpha Team's orders were to bury whatever was here. He'd be alive if he hadn't sent that damn signal." "I don't understand, Lieutenant." "It's why nobody was sent after Alpha Team. They want this whole place to stay dark." "Then what about us?" "The real order is to make sure no other messages from PX-51 are heard. So we follow the order, clear it up, keep our mouths shut, which is exactly what Omega Team are going to do." I looked down at Leyland's body. Blood pooled around his head. Monroe holstered her gun and made her way past me. "But," I said, "he was one of us." "Now that matters to you, Hodge? God damn it. You, out of all of them, should understand." She turned back to face me. "We have to follow orders. That is our job. That is our life. We do not question, we do not hesitate. You know this, Hodge. There is no doubt. Because what the hell are we without it?" I nodded. She was right. We began to make our way back to the others. In my mind, I kept seeing Leyland's face. If he'd followed his orders and not made contact. But what was the alternative? Staying on this planet to die? And the lieutenant's orders, not to let Leyland leave the planet. Orders to kill one of our own. And who gave our orders? They were as faceless to us as we were to them. What if they decided one day that we were like Leyland, something that needed to be silenced? Would orders be followed then? Our return to the rest of Omega Team was interrupted as my scanner began to beep and gunshots came down the corridor. Monroe shouted down her headset. "What's going on down there? Report!" No reply other than shouts, static, and gunfire. "Haul it, everyone! Move!" The rest of the team quickly caught up with us, firing behind them. Monroe called, "This way! Move it!" Anders called back, "Where's Leyland?" I couldn't speak. Monroe quickly said, "They got him, but we need to go now!" In In the brief glimpses I got, these colonists all appeared so much paler and more emaciated than those above ground, but they still possessed the crazed strength. As we ran through the pitch dark, Haywood tripped and fell. The colonists were on him in a second. It put more distance between us and them, with his echoing screams following us even as we got further away. We finally made it to the emergency elevator. It was the same size and shape as the other one.
"This won't hold all of our weight,"
Anders said. Monroe pulled the gate across and we began to get in. Behind us, the colonists were heading down the tunnel. The elevator filled up quick. I ended up being the last one in, squashed right up against Anders and someone else.
"Someone start it up!"
Anders pulled the grate across as much as she could with the little room she had. The elevator jerked as it tried to lift us. It groaned dramatically under our weight.
"It won't go! Oh God! It's too heavy!"
I shouted. I felt an arm reach around my back. The grate on the elevator was pulled back open. Anders said,
"This is for Lucas Collins!"
I was pushed out of the elevator. I landed flat on my face. By the time I was stood up, the elevator was slowly heading upwards.
"No! No!"
I shouted. I reached out and touched metal for a moment. Then the elevator had gone. The colonists were racing up behind me. I tried to think quickly. How was I going to get out? Could I hold them off until I called the elevator back? And I shot around, but lost my balance. I fell backwards, down the elevator shaft. I came to my senses, not because of the pain, but because of a noise in my head. I tried to drown it out with other thoughts. How far had I fallen? How many levels? I was still alive. My leg was busted. They'd left me to die here. There was a little light from the torch in my helmet, even with the lens cracked. I dragged myself from the bottom of the elevator shaft into the tunnel. I thought about calling the elevator and going back up, but the noise in my head. I swear, someone was calling to me. I told them I couldn't come. I was broken. Stupid broken Hodge who always followed the rules, and look where that got him. Here, dying at the bottom of a mine on a hellhole of a planet because he was following his orders. I stood by while Leyland got killed because I was following orders. I spoke out against Lucas Collins because of orders. My whole life, orders, orders, orders. Everything built on those. Everything I knew, trusted, and understood. And where had that got me? Where? All I knew now was that noise. I didn't even feel my leg as I dragged myself along the rough rock of the tunnel. I ignored my scanner beeping. Ignored it telling me that there was a large anomalous life sign ahead. It didn't matter. Nothing did anymore. The tunnel suddenly broke off into jagged edges overlooking a large space. It must have been the cave. The noise beckoned me to pull myself to the edge. It wanted to see me. Okay, I told it, as I pulled my mangled body to the edge with all the willpower I had left. The light from my torch only illuminated a small portion of flesh. It was organic and alive, and what it fully looked like I couldn't tell. It was the largest living thing I'd ever been near in my life. I knew it wasn't just looking at me. It was looking into me. I began to scream as agony shot through my brain. A tendril wrapped itself around me and lifted me so I was standing. The things that it showed me. I cried, but I cried with joy. I had been right. It didn't matter. Nothing did. Orders were a fallacy. Rules and logic were a joke. The universe propped up by these ideas when it should all be chaos. Chaos without form or thought. All things must be broken down so that all things could be one. Yes, I could see it. It was beautiful. Chaos is the state we must all revert to. Everything that I believed before was a lie. Then I realized I was standing. My leg wasn't broken. Thank you, I sobbed. Thank you. I had been blessed, and I knew what it wanted me to do. I had to spread the message. As I called the elevator down, I felt lighter than I had in all my life. I was free. Finally, free. Above ground, the colonists moved aside for me. They had been close to understanding, but they could not. It had been too much for them. I pitied them for not understanding. I walked to the Vulcan, our ship. They hadn't left yet. Good.
Hodge? Is that Hodge?
I heard through the headset. I had forgotten I was wearing it. They were shackles of my old life.
Yes,
I replied.
let me in.
There was chatter back and forth.
Please,
I said.
let me in.
The door of the ship opened, and a ramp came down. I moved in quickly before they could close it on me.
Oh my God,
Someone said.
what happened to his eyes?
It was Anders next to me. I smiled. She would be the first to know.
How is there light coming from his eyes?
She screamed. I gently held her face. Here, I whispered. Let me show you. And I did. The message left my brain and spread to hers. She screamed so loudly. She was struggling to understand it. I held open my arms and sent our message to all of the squad. All of them knew the truth of the universe and of the chaos we should return to. They could not see. Our kits contained a small knife. Many were using theirs to remove their eyes, a pointless rejection of the truth. Gunshots rang out as some ended their own and others' lives sooner. Monroe was the last. I stepped over the bodies to reach her. One eye was gone. The other dangled against her cheekbone. There, I said, and held her close. You can see it now. You're free. I held her until her life was gone. They were all too weak, as I had once been. Their belief in systems and rules was laughable. But others would understand. I took the pilot's seat and began preparations to get the ship into the air. Soon I would return to base. I would show them what I had seen. Maybe they would tell others. And ultimately, the universe would be stripped down to nothing but chaos and equality between all things. Because all things would be nothing, and all would be the same. As the ship took off, I cried at the beauty of the message I was going to tell.
The Dark Cosmos. Stay cosmic. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My ears were ringing. My heart was thumping against my chest. My back was pressed against something hard and cold. Thudding boots startled me. I flinched at the sounds coming around me.
Put your hands up!
A gruff male voice commanded. I did, my eyes focusing on the blood running between my fingers and dripping down onto my chest.
We have one female survivor. I repeat, one female survivor!
Another male voice added. I sat up, my eyes roaming along my body as more boots surrounded me. What happened? My quivering lips asked, flashlight shining on what was once my beautiful wedding dress, revealed that it was now shredded, torn, and dyed with blood. I looked up at the officers around me, with their electronic rifles pointed at my head and torso, and then at the room I was in. Tables and chairs were flipped and askew, decorations thrown haphazardly in all directions. I was sitting on the stone floor, surrounded by destroyed flowers, shattered glass, and blood. So much blood. All the people were
Murdered!
A male officer with a thick brown mustache and a thinning ponytail slammed down photographs of everyone I knew on the metal table that stood between us. Murdered was too kind of a word. My hands, shackled in handcuffs, came up to my mouth, my chest heaving in grief. The sight of them tore at me. I immediately started sobbing, seeing my husband of only a few hours slain at my feet, with his eyes and mouth open. His torso had been slashed open, and his insides were no longer inside of him. My best friend was in two halves, reaching out towards me with her mouth twisted in a terrified shriek, and I vomited all over the photos. The man stepped back, checking his white digital camo fatigues and white lace-up boots for any splash damage. My lips trembled as he moved to my right side, around the puke.
This is some heavy-duty work for a small woman such as yourself.
He started to read from his folder.
Caitlin Feller,
32 years old, mail carrier on our neighbor planet Origin.
He peered at me over top of it.
No criminal record until today, though, when for some reason you decided to kill everyone at your wedding reception.
Hot tears spilled over my bottom eyelids, and I grit my teeth. I didn't do this. I didn't kill anyone. My voice trailed off in a quiver. A box of tissues appeared from my left side. It was then that I noticed a second man in the room with us. He gestured to it with a head nod. He was dressed the same as the other man, except he was at least a decade younger, with shorter, blonde hair. I took one, glancing at the pile of pictures beneath my bile once more.
Well, that's a relief. You hear that, Lieutenant Casey? She didn't do it. Case closed.
The first man marked. Lieutenant Casey shot him a glance.
Cutter?
He looked back at me, setting down the folder in front of the chair, across from me.
We've never seen such a violent scene out here before. Hell, I had barely seen this much blood in my entire military career of multiple tours across dozens of planets. And yet, you and your entire wedding party traipse around here on our little slice of frozen hell, and within hours become the biggest crime on record.
I slumped in the chair, as best as I could anyway. The bustle of my dress didn't give me much room to begin with. Lieutenant Casey sat down in the second chair across from me, leaning his elbows on the table.
Why don't you just start by telling us what happened?
I tried to think, but everything was a blur. I don't know. One minute we were getting ready for the garter toss, and the next... I squeezed my eyes shut, hearing the screams. There was just... screaming. Something just tore through the whole place.
You want us to believe that you were just sitting down in a chair with your legs up in the air waiting on your husband to stick his hand up your skirt, and then some random massacre just happens, with no other witnesses or anyone even alive, except you, and that you had nothing to do with this?
Lieutenant Cutter sat back against the chair, crossing his arms over his chest and puffing out his gut. I shrank even further in my seat. I know how this sounds, but if you just...
Just what? Have a look around? Trust me, darling, we're going to be looking at a lot of things for quite some time before you ever get close to leaving the station.
He jabbed his finger towards me, frowning.
And the first thing we're going to find out is how you killed all those people and what kind of weapon you used.
A knock sounded at the closed door. Then it opened. An older woman with graying hair and wrinkled skin came in wearing a lab coat on top of her fatigues and bifocal glasses. Both men gave her a respectful nod, but the one called Cutter stood up between us.
I need to evaluate her.
Dr. Reynolds, I said I would send for you when it was time.
The old woman blew him off, coming around to look at me.
Poor thing.
She whispered.
Poor thing?
Cutter laughed mockingly.
She's our only suspect in the mass murder of her entire wedding.
His accusations caused me to shake, my body going cold.
My job is to do a medical evaluation on this woman. Are you obstructing me?
No, ma'am,
he said through gritted teeth, signaling Lieutenant Casey to take me out. My handcuffs were unchained from the table, and I was led down a few halls to the medical room.
Well now, let's get a good look at ya.
She pointed at the gurney with a bony finger. I grabbed the bloody wedding dress with my hands, shuffling over to the bed, and sitting as best I could with the bustle.
I'ma take these off of you, so don't you go doing anything stupid.
I nodded. She unlocked the handcuffs and set them aside. I rubbed my aching wrists. She grabbed her rolling chair and sat down in front of me.
What's your name?
Caitlin Feller.
All right, Mrs. Feller. It's my understanding that you were just found at the scene of a very grisly crime scene.
I just nodded at her, wiping my tears.
I'm going to be giving you an examination. As long as you cooperate, it'll be a long process, but not a painful one. You got me? I'm on my last days on this frozen rock before retiring to Origin. And I don't want my last patient to be more work than it needs to be.
Her brown eyes were kind, but held a promise that she wasn't just some old woman. This town was military run, and the last outpost for 100 miles of snow dunes. During the day, it barely got above 34 degrees. Supply runs only came once a week, and the entire population was less than 4,000. My husband and I were just civilians, having traveled here on a vacation a couple of months ago. He proposed to me here, and so we decided to come back and have a snow destination wedding. Outside of the military presence, the civilian side of the outpost was rather touristy, despite the entire planet being made of snow and ice. Cold activities such as sledding, skiing, and ice skating were an attraction for us who lived on Origin, an entirely tropical planet. But it wasn't without its dangers, and the military was the one keeping things safe when some of the local wildlife wanted to make an appearance. I wasn't sure what that wildlife was, but it had to be what attacked at my reception.
Look at this mess.
The old woman sighed, looking over me.
Well, no sense in trying to salvage this. Now, I'ma have to cut this off of you to get a good look at you. Check you for wounds and the like.
She wasn't asking. I stood up while she wheeled backward, grabbing a pair of scissors. She pointed them at me.
No problems?
No, ma'am.
All right, then.
She wheeled back to my left side, nodding to the nurse. She picked up another pair and came to my right side. I held out my arms, looking up at the ceiling. My body tugged and jerked as they cut the wedding dress off of me. My lips quivered as I tried to hold in my tears, failing. I sniffled to keep the snot from rolling down my lips while I sobbed as quietly as I could. Finally, the last bit of fabric was cut, and the weight of my dress fell away. My eyes burned, and I looked back down at her.
I'll need to take photographic evidence of your body, all right?
I nodded. The nurse took the scissors from her and handed her a camera instead. Every inch of me was photographed. The following step was them collecting everything that looked like it could be evidence and bagging it. Blood chips, hair, skin cells, my spit swabs, and no one knows what else they found in my hair that used to be in a gorgeous updo, but was now dangling in tangles. My head ached in one of the worst migraines I had ever experienced. Between their whispered conversation about what they found or didn't find, and where to catalogue it, and the drumming of the headache at my temples, I could hear the faint sound of scratching nearby. Lastly, and finally, she showed me to the shower.
There's everything you need to get cleaned up. There will be some clean clothes waiting for you when you get done, and you'll have to be quick about it. This ain't the resort, so the hot water won't last long.
It was hours later when I was finally done and escorted into a holding cell for the night, wearing a prison jumpsuit and soft cloth shoes. I'd never cried so hard in my life. I spent the night wailing and moaning in agony, so emotionally intense that it became physical pain. I didn't sleep much, only a few minutes here and there when I was so exhausted that my body forced a shutdown. But then a noise would startle me awake. A door being buzzed open, someone walking past, or a weird scratching sound I assumed was a mouse nearby looking for a snack. But the noise never came too close. I knew it was morning only because the sound of my cell door opening startled me awake again.
Good morning, Mrs. Feller.
Just Caitlin is fine. I managed to croak out with a dry throat and cracked lips.
We have some more questions to ask you, and I brought you a little something to eat.
Lieutenant Casey jiggled a tray of food in his hand, beckoning me to come out of the cell. I stood up as best as I could, with the ankle and wrist shackles on, shuffling through the door as he led me back to the interrogation room I was in the night before. He signaled me to sit down, and I complied. The lieutenant shut the door, then set down the plate of food for me Once he had my cuffs attached to the steel table that was anchored to the floor, he sat across from me. The metal tray had what seemed to be scrambled eggs and toast with a bottle of water. But I wasn't hungry. Well, I was, but my mind wasn't in the mood to eat, despite my stomach growling. He pulled a pen out of his white dress shirt pocket and met my eyes.
Why don't you go over what happened last night again, Caitlin?
My husband. He was about to get the garter and toss it to the bachelors.
Go on.
He started writing down my words. I couldn't see anything, but there was growling. My husband, he was in front of me and I closed my eyes. He screamed my name. The sobs returned and my chest felt tight and my head felt like it was going to explode. Can I go see the medic? My head is pounding and Lieutenant Casey eyed me. I'm not trying to pull anything. I swear. Please, I just want something for this headache. I've been crying for almost 24 hours. He conceded with a sigh.
Yeah, we can go get you something.
He took me down to the medical room. We were met with the surprised face of Dr. Reynolds, getting ready to leave.
Is everything all right?
She's had a headache since we found her last night, and she wants some medication.
Oh,
She pushed her glasses up higher on her nose.
of course. I can do that before I head out. Let me just grab it.
Lieutenant Casey sat me down in the chair next to the counter as she rummaged through the cabinets. His radio crackled to life.
Lieutenant Casey to the interrogation room.
I'll be right back for her.
He handcuffed me to the chair and left. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses.
Mrs. Feller, I wanted to ask you, did you give birth recently?
Dr. Reynolds handed me the medicine. The scratching noise returned. I looked around. I just heard a scratching noise. I swallowed the pills with a little cup of water she gave me. We both stopped moving. The scratching persisted.
Yeah, I hear it.
Dr. Reynolds set down the medicine bottle, looking around. It sounds like it's coming from over there. I pointed toward the freshly cleaned gurney. Dr. Reynolds pulled out a penlight, grunting as she tried to squat down and realized she'd have to get on her hands and knees. She groaned, pointing the light under the bed and lowering her head. Something vine-like latched onto her face and she started screaming. I shrieked as it went down her throat, gagging her. Her eyes bulged, turning a bright purple color as she was jerked across the room. I had no idea what she was trying to say with an alien vine down her throat, and I just kept screaming. I pulled my legs up off the floor, yanking on the chain I was handcuffed to. The door slammed open. Lieutenants Cutter and Casey stormed in, handguns pointed at me, then down at the doctor whining on the floor.
What the fuck was that?
They fired shots at it, but missed. The vine slid back out of her body and disappeared under the gurney. Lieutenant Casey uncuffed me, pushing me out of the room as a couple more soldiers went inside to clear the room. He looked over me.
Are you alright?
All I could do was nod my head, heaving in breaths. He sat me down at the desk, his gun still in his hand but not aimed at anything as he stood guard over me. This had to be a bad dream. Wake up, Caitlin! Wake up!
Wake up.
I was startled awake, looking up at the jail cell bars. I was curled up in one of the corners of my cell.
Weird shit has been happening ever since you got here.
Lieutenant Cutter was peering at me in anger.
Are you ready to confess yet?
Confess to what? I felt a twisting in my gut. The scratching sound I'd heard before was back, but I didn't see anything. Cutter didn't seem to notice. He opened the cell, urging me to get out. Back into the interrogation room, back into the same seat, the same table, the same pictures. He was angry, yelling at me so much spittle flew from his lips.
How did you manage to kill 20 people without having not one scratch on you at all?
He slammed both hands on the table. I flinched. I didn't do it, I said, exhausted and afraid. My body shook as he stood up straight, coming around the table at me. The lights in the room flickered, making him pause. A knock sounded at the door. He ran a hand over his hair, sighing before opening it. Lieutenant Casey walked in with another file of papers, handing them to Lieutenant Cutter. His usual look of pity when he looked at me was now hardened. Cutter checked the papers, giving out a bark of a laugh.
So the good doctor, God rest her soul, took some samples for testing yesterday. Today,
He laid out each paper in front of me.
we got some results back. Under your fingernails was not only the blood of your husband, which considering your proximity to the body wasn't a surprise, but...
I grit my teeth, keeping my eyes locked onto his. I didn't kill my husband.
Explain to me how you got his skin under your nails, A lover's spat at the reception, maybe? Found him fucking your maid of honor in the bathroom?
No!
I mean,
He looked at Lieutenant Casey.
if I found my wife screwing my best man on the day we got married, I might just kill them both.
He turned back to me, laughing. Actually, laughing.
Is that why he was at your feet, begging you for his life?
No, I don't know.
You don't know what? Why you killed them all?
He badgered me.
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Casey warned.
I'm just trying to find out why some male lady from the next planet over decided to come over here and commit the biggest massacre in my town on the night of her wedding to a man she had only met a few months ago.
I jumped to my feet. I didn't kill them! The lights flickered again. Suddenly, Lieutenant Cutter had my throat in his hands, squeezing.
Cutter!
Lieutenant Casey shouted. I gasped for breath, clawing at his hand. His eyes bore into me.
You are a murderer, and you won't get away with this.
He let me go. I collapsed to the floor, coughing and grabbing my neck.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Lieutenant Casey yelled, pushing him back away from me towards the door. The scratching noise was back, and I looked around for it. As the officers were arguing, a loud pounding came from the door. We all looked up as it flew open.
Lieutenants, you're gonna want to have to come and see this.
We're in the middle of something.
It's the bodies from the...
He looked at me, then back at Lieutenant Cutter.
4 of them have been ripped open from the inside, including the dock. Like something burst out of them. And we found another body just outside the...
They shushed him, shooing him out and shutting the door again, looking down at me. I told you there was something out there. I gasped in multiple breaths. You saw what it did to the doctor. Lieutenant Cutter slammed his fist against the wall. Lieutenant Casey walked over to me, extending his hand.
On behalf of the entire station, I would like to formally apologize for Lieutenant Cutter's behavior. It is within your right to file a report of assault against him for his actions.
Lieutenant Cutter stormed out of the room, while Lieutenant Casey helped me to my feet. As I was escorted back to my cell, there was a buzz in the air about the killings. How long will I be here?
Honestly, I don't know. This is the most action we've ever seen out there. Usually creature attacks only happen at the other outposts a lot farther away than here. For someone to have traveled this far means they're running low on food and getting desperate.
He gave me a pitying glance.
Looks like you just had some bad luck when you decided to get married here.
I was still going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future. But things were looking up. Not that I wanted anyone else to die, but if the same thing that killed the doctor and the man they found was what killed my family and friends, then it proved my innocence. All I had left to do was wait. He started walking away, and the scratching sound returned. I looked around my cell. Nothing. But nothing was better than whatever that vine was that killed the doctor. It was the screaming that woke me up, followed by a roar that shook the concrete foundation beneath my feet as I stood up from the jail cell cot. I was in a back corner with no direct visual of anything but grey brick wall ahead of me. Panic rose in my chest as another roar sounded, vibrating my entire body. I grew hot, my hairline feeling clammy, as my brain tried to comprehend what animal it could be. Back on Origin, there are various mammals and reptiles that I could describe, but this sounded like pure darkness. The roar was a mixture of things my mind tried to put together. A reptile and an insect, with the timbre of a large mammal. Another shout snapped my mind back to the present.
We have to get you out of here!
Lieutenant Casey shouted. "What's out there?" I yelled back while he fidgeted with the key to unlock my cell.
It's a prisonog.
He finally got it open, signaling me out. "But they're a giant tropical tree species from Origin. Why would they be here on an ice planet?" It was then that I noticed his reason for fidgeting with his keys was that he had a shotgun under his arms that he fumbled nervously back into his hands. He hit the primer button and it started to hum, charging the magazine of electric rounds.
I don't know.
"Are you sure that'll be enough?"
I guess we'll find out. We're evacuating the citizens to the bunker. It's usually only used for severe snowstorms and the occasional Pritzal bird swarm, but it's the only thing that might stand a chance of protecting everyone.
I followed him as he took me through another hallway that led out behind the station instead of the front. He opened the door. A burst of light bombarded me. I paused, covering my eyes for a moment. There was nothing but snow and cold ahead of us that led out to what they called the snow dunes. Only a frozen death was that way.
Let's go!
Lieutenant Casey called out. He had a snow patrol sedan started, the engine roaring in protest of the cold. The back door was open, and he was signaling me to hurry up and get in. I slid inside as fast as I could. He slammed the door shut behind me, appearing in the driver's seat. He put the vehicle in gear and drove off. White puffs of breath rolled out of my mouth as I panted, looking around in panic. I didn't see the creature, which was a relief. The main town road was empty, except for a couple of snowmobiles and other snow-appropriate vehicles ahead of us going in the same direction. My body relaxed a little, but a shiver reminded me that I was out in freezing temperatures, only wearing a short-sleeved jumpsuit and cloth shoes. Lieutenant Casey noticed me shivering, cranking up the heat.
Sorry, it's not warm yet.
I nodded, holding my arms tightly. He grabbed a blanket from the front seat, tossing it back at me.
Almost there.
Something large slammed into the left side of the vehicle. We screamed as the sedan slid on the ice. He jammed on the gas and we lurched forward. I looked back. Dark, green, inky tentacles slapped against the windows, wrapping around us. We jerked to a stop. Lieutenant Casey pressed the gas as far as it would go, gritting his teeth.
Come on!
The wheels spun in protest. The car started to slide back and forth as the creature held us in place. Exhaust fumes came into the vents with the heating. Snow kicked up, digging us into the road. The tentacles started to squeeze tighter, the side windows shattering. I screamed, holding my head for protection. A hand wrapped around one of my wrists. Lieutenant Casey was pulling me towards the front seat.
Get out!
He shouted. I scrambled over the headrest into the front. Ouch! I whimpered, cutting my hand on the glass in the seat and smearing it with blood. The tentacles stopped moving.
Cover your head!
He wasted no time shooting out the windshield. The glass exploded. I scampered out of the vehicle, shots ringing out. He was inside, shooting at the tentacles, but they were still unmoving. I looked up, frozen in place. All sounds disappeared, except for the beating of my heart and my ragged breathing. The prisonac was a dark green, almost black void against the backdrop of pristine white snow. The closest thing my mind could compare it to was a giant praying mantis mixed with a moth and covered in tree vines. 4 long furry antennae pulsed, extending and retracting around its upside-down teardrop-shaped head. Large purple eyes, half closed into large slits, focused on me, then widening into perfect circles.
Chiricale.
It spoke, the same sound that came from the doctor, but there was a noticeable distortion to it, like someone possessed by an entity. It reached out one of the hands that appeared from its viney, dark form. It was like a tendril of a forest, and 3 more outstretched towards me. An explosion went off on its head. Fire and brimstone poured down and onto the vehicle Lieutenant Casey was still trapped in. It roared in anger, turning to look at the human on the road behind me. It was Lieutenant Cutter, reloading a large weapon. The tentacles unwrapped from the sedan, turning its large body towards Cutter.
Eat this, motherfucker!
Cutter shot again, the weapon's missile slamming into the creature's roaring mouth. Lieutenant Casey grabbed me, pulling me away from the vehicle and towards the bunker. I ran out of my shoes trying to keep up with Lieutenant Casey. Roars and thunderous sliding sounded as it moved across the snow and ice behind us at great speeds. There were soldiers with guns at the door of the bunker as it was closing the giant doors. One of them shot a flare into the air to call for support. Lieutenant Cutter loaded another shot. We were almost there. 2 tentacles grabbed my waist. They wrapped around me, pulling me back towards it. Rockets soared overhead, hitting the prisonac in the face and chest again. I covered my head as debris fell around me in flames, melting the snow in waves of heat. The creature's wounds dripped liquid, green blood that fell in clumps, sizzling in the heat surrounding me. It whipped its tentacles, striking the building. The front row of soldiers smeared into a crimson paste along the cracked walls. Another, longer, deeper roar, a war cry. 4 more, smaller prisonacs appeared from the edges of town. They were covered in snow, blending in with the trees. They shook, creating a fresh snowfall on the main road and vehicles, putting out the small fires, clumsily crashing through the buildings in their way. Another tentacle whipped past me, ruffling my hair. It latched onto Lieutenant Casey. His face twisted in terror as the tentacles brought him up to its mouth. Blood splattered to the ground below, showering me with a hot crimson waterfall. My ongoing headache immediately ceased. My jaw cracked, unhinging. My arms grew out, turning dark green and twisting into viney tendrils. My legs did the same, growing out and making me taller and elongating my form. My eyes took on a double vision. 4 furry antennae flickered at the noises around me.
My queen.
I stretched out, to the horror of the soldiers ahead of us. Feed the children. My voice was loud, buzzing. It's been too long since they ate. I turned, pointing at Lieutenant Cutter. But that one is mine. My family, my real family, roared, sliding across the snow like avid ice skaters, even though this climate was foreign to our species. Past me, towards the bunker full of townsfolk hidden inside. They cracked it open, like an egg, screams erupting from within. Artillery soared through the air, but their weaponry wouldn't be able to kill us. Our wounds would heal after feeding. I found Lieutenant Cutter in the fray and grabbed his legs, dragging him out into the snow as my family feasted upon the residents inside. I told you I didn't kill those people. Unfortunately, the host never survived the trip. I dangled him in front of me as he started pissing himself. I give this tourist destination only 3 stars. Way too hostile of an environment for my babies. I brought him up to my eyes, grinning with my wide mouth as he shrieked.
The dark cosmos. Stay cosmic.
Chapter 1: Rapid Descent. I've seen enough hellscapes in my lifetime to make any Marine cry. I've filled entire oceans with blood, both mine and my enemies. But for some reason, it never bothered me. It wasn't the Marine Corps training and conditioning or the combat stims. I've always been able to detach and do what needs to be done. Captain Alex Reaper Mercer is what they call me. I always hated those ridiculous edgy call signs, even as a kid. As for the Corps, it turns out there isn't much mental difference between an angsty teenager and a fully grown Marine with battle experience. Fact is, if you see my face on the battlefield, it's already too late. Look at me, talking like a kid again. My latest assignment? Stop a scientific experiment gone berserk, neutralize the hostiles, save the remaining staff, if possible, destroy, if necessary. Damn scientists. Always playing God. Always sticking their grubby fingers in stuff they had no business in doing. It's a bit hypocritical of me, I know. The Mark VI plasma rifle I'm shouldering was designed and produced by the same kind of people I'm about to mow down. A twisted joke if I ever heard one. To make matters even funnier, I used to be married to one of them. And she's here, in this installation. It's her experiment I am ordered to put under control. The military dog X is coming to break their former beloved's toys. You always meet your exes at the most inopportune moments, they say. Well, it looks like my number is almost up. Hope I won't have to put a slug in her cranium. The shuttle suddenly banks to the left. Did we hit something? Surface-to-air missiles? Can't be. The outpost has 0 defenses. Well, no time to think about that now. The shuttle is going into a nosedive. Looks like a crash landing. Not the best entrance a girl can ask for, but it beats exploding in midair. The team is strapped in and raring to go. Time to roll the dice and hope for a good outcome. It would suck if we don't get to shoot anyone. One thing bothers me. I feel like I've done this before. Oh, my whole body is aching. Ears are ringing. Fingers are a bit numb. A strong flash of light blinds me. I open my eyes. The shuttle is covered in darkness. The red emergency light is flickering. I can see silhouettes moving. Can't really put my finger on who's who. Rodriguez! You breathing? I called out. Yes, ma'am, she responded as if she was waiting for me to call on her. She is always so fucking overzealous and ready to get orders. Status report, I ask her, as I try to untangle the mess of cables that's got me trapped in this seat and probably saved my life for all I know. JD, Smith, and Jennings are KIA. VIP is safe and secure, minus the crapped pants. Mission failed on that front. Kai is good to go. Oh, and I'm fine also. Thanks for asking, she answered. I always loved that nonchalant attitude of hers. If the Corps didn't beat it out of her, it deserves my respect. She is one tough and funny cookie. Has a telescope for an eye. Never seen someone be so precise with anything in their hands. She can hit a fly with a quarter, and I've seen her do it. Best second in command I could ever ask for. Kai is no slouch either. Man has a talent for thinking outside the box. Saw him make a shrapnel bomb with spoons and forks. The results were both frightening and hilarious in equal measure. Everything is a puzzle to him, and he uses whatever he has on hand to solve it. He got us out of many sticky situations. I'm glad I don't have to do this thing alone. The VIP is Dr. Leonard Sinclair. Someone has to translate this science mumbo-jumbo. This man had the lucky draw of being both my ex-wife's colleague and the only other person who understands what is happening with this experiment. Really hate to be in his shoes now. Non-combatants always get the short end of the stick. We have training to deal with stress and trauma. He will have scars for the rest of his minuscule life. I almost feel sorry for him at this point. Stop your grinning and drop your linen, boys and girls. Move out and secure the LZ. We don't have the time to chit-chat. Rodriguez picked up Sinclair like a bag and carried him outside. Me and Kai scanned the room for hostiles. I peeked back at the shuttle. It's out of commission for sure. Pilots are probably dead or unconscious. Either way, no going back now. Point of no return threshold has been breached. We have a job to do. Chapter 2. Abandon all hope. The hangar was a mess. We landed on some people and made a pretty showing of it. Blood and body parts all over the landing zone. Ceiling lights are shot to shit. I have to resort to rifle-mounted lights for now. Something feels wrong under my feet. Feels like a scraped pattern on the metal floor. Can't really make it out. Too much blood, viscera, and debris on the floor. No time for sightseeing, either. Fubar as usual and expected, Captain. Everyone knows we are here. Welcome party should be arriving anytime soon, Rodriguez reports. Let's get moving. No time like the present. Rodriguez takes point. Kai with VIP. I'm in the back. I bark out my orders like I usually do. Nothing fancy or flowery, just succinct orders. Keeps the minds of the team focused. There's screaming and laughing coming from deep within the installation. Someone sure is having a lot of fun, both fun and terrifying. I tell everyone to move out, not wanting to find out what kind of a surprise we are going to get. All right, Sinclair. We need a plan to shut down this experiment. What's our first move? I asked.
Step 1 is temporal flux stabilization. We initiate stabilization by activating temporal stabilization nodes. The team has to go through the installation, identifying key locations for activation. Security codes will be input to activate each temporal stabilization node. Be prepared for resistance from the staff and hostile temporal anomalies during the stabilization process.
Hostile temporal anomalies? As in the opposite of friendly temporal anomalies? Rodriguez quipped with her usual bullshit.
Well, no, but some anomalies can seem benign by comparison, Sergeant Rodriguez.
What do you mean benign?
Well, it's relative, I guess. Let's say while running, you pass through a temporal anomaly with your legs. A benign anomaly would simply stop you in your tracks. On the other hand, a hostile anomaly would divide your body in half, since your atoms are moving in opposite directions at different speeds. In this scenario, the best case result is a broken fifth lumbar vertebra and severing the spinal column, rendering you paraplegic. A worst case, dissection and death from imminent trauma blood loss. It's quite interesting. You see,
that's enough. Keep focus on the job ahead, I interjected, and please leave out the details next time. I have to admit, he did paint a gruesome picture of what is waiting for us in this hellhole. Not looking forward to it, but this is not an everyday battlefield I'm about to tread on. The laws of physics can just decide not to work at one moment. Shrapnel can accelerate or decelerate to a stop. Too many variables to account. Too little prep time. I have to push forward. Emergency lights don't offer much in the way of illumination. The hallway is clear for now. Something is written on the wall. The hallway splits into left and right, seeming like they stretch on forever into the darkness of the installation. I shine a light on the wall to satisfy my curiosity, if only for a little bit. These look like equations. Sinclair, what the hell is this? I asked the good doctor.
Well, from what I can tell, Captain, they look like temporal equations, but from a scientific point of view, it's pure gibberish. There is no logic to it, no elegance. Repeating functions, ignored fractions, unsolved variables, ravings of some madman.
He seemed more offended than repulsed at the scribblings on the wall, ignoring the fact that most of the supposed equations were either carved in or written in shit, blood, or both. I almost envy Dr. Sinclair for his narrow-mindedness.
Looks like the natives are coming to greet us. Bet they will deign to explain it to us. Maybe we can take notes and compare after class,
said Rodriguez.
We have to go left and follow the hallway, and then go right so we get to the main engineering hub,
Dr. Sinclair said in a panic, his voice trembling from sheer panic. Guns up, shoot to kill. Do not stop moving. Chapter 3. Bloody Bedlam. What followed was like nothing I've ever experienced before, but somehow felt familiar. First came the rolling thunder of feet stampeding toward us. I actually got goosebumps. Can't really pick out an exact number of how many hostile entities are barreling towards us. I can hear the scraping of blades and pipes, a barbaric cacophony of sounds joined by maniacal laughter. Excellent terror tactics, which would have worked on us if we didn't know what we were doing, like some wet behind the ears recruits. As soon as they turned the corner, we opened fire. Plasma bolts light up the hallway as they fly to their intended targets. Center mass every single time, no fancy stuff. When supercharged plasma meets a torso, it liquefies it in mere seconds. If the torso was on the small side, and you got lucky, you would get some over-penetration and hit a target behind the first one. I don't invest much faith in luck, so a hit is a hit. Fire and forget, then move on to the next target. Doesn't matter who you are. That plasma slug hits your chest, and your arms and head fall off before the heat burns the entire torso down. No double tap required. They seem like an endless horde of silhouettes. Flashes of emergency lights show their visage only for a very brief second. Half-naked and emaciated, ghoul-like creatures with carvings all over their bodies. Some had no eyes. Some were missing their jaws. All of them are rambling, screaming, laughing, like some undead horde in a video game. And they are fast. Surprisingly fast for how much they have been stripped of their humanity. As if their only thought process was to murder. Their only instinct was to get to the closest living thing and kill it as violently as possible. Good thing, too, since these types of psychopaths have zero qualms about running into enemy fire, which makes my job easier. And yet, every corridor is a struggle. Every step forward was earned by a slug fired from us. Disciplined fire volleys and retreating cover fire always thins out the herd. Something doesn't sit right with me. This installation has a reported 150 personnel in it. Our rifles have about 30 slugs per magazine, and we are on our second magazine individually. That means each of us has effectively neutralized 60 targets. Any incidental miss would be eventually made up with overpenetration or explosives. That makes 180 confirmed kills. This installation is the last outpost before the great nothingness of the desert on this godforsaken planet. This planet and base location were chosen specifically because they were out of the way of any major stellar civilian traffic. Where are all these bodies coming from? Doesn't make a lick of sense. We did what the doctor asked, turned on the 3 temporal stabilization nodes. It did very little to slow down whatever the fuck was happening around us. If anything, it made things stranger. Visual distortions started happening and became easily identifiable. The horde dissipated, resistance became manageable, just a few stragglers here and there. Movement was smooth, clearing every corner, securing every blind spot we could find. As we advanced through the station, things became more and more bizarre. Hallways that seemed to stretch and repeat infinitely, No matter how much you walk, it looks and feels the same. Kai figured that one out pretty quick and made a door with some explosives and broke the loop somehow. We found some dark, blood-red streaks in some spots which emitted some sort of human sounds. The closer you got to the anomaly, the more blaring and disgusting the sounds became. I grabbed a skull off the ground and threw it in. It melted into slag before my eyes. It would suck if someone fell into this thing. Managed to save some ammo by luring some of the natives, as Rodriguez calls them, into the anomalies. Meat confetti is how she describes the result that followed. Kai even chuckled. Chapter 4. The Red Angel Cometh. We catch a break with no enemies around us. The team relaxes for a short time. We do an ammo count, get our bearings. I have to ask the good doctor about something. So, Doc, these time glitches we are seeing, I asked, seeking to break the tension.
Mercer, let me clarify. Temporal anomalies aren't mere glitches. They're like ripples in a cosmic pond, distorting reality itself.
So, what you're saying is, we're not dealing with random hiccups in time? I inquired further.
Exactly. Think of time as a delicate fabric, and the experiment tore a hole in it. Now we're navigating through the frayed edges.
And these anomalies we're encountering? I was curious, to say the least.
They're echoes of the experiment's impact. Past, present, and future intertwine within the installation. We might see things that have happened, things happening, and even glimpses of what's to come.
What about those time-looping corridors?
Ah, the loops. Imagine a stretch of time folding onto itself, creating a loop. We step in and events replay, trapping us until we break the cycle.
How did we end up with this mess, Sinclair?
Ambition, Mercer. Our pursuit of understanding unleashed forces we couldn't comprehend. Now, we navigate the consequences of our hubris.
Do you think we can fix it?
That's what we're attempting. Our shutdown plan is a delicate dance between control and chaos. But be cautious. The more we interfere, the more the anomalies and my dear colleagues will resist.
So we're walking a tightrope between order and pandemonium, as I feared.
In essence, Captain, the fabric of time is fragile, and our every step sends ripples through its intricate weave.
What a simplistic and reductionist point of view, my dear colleague! A familiar voice booms throughout the facility. Dr. Sinclair's face turns pale, and my team and I raise our guns as if we are under an ambush. I know that voice. I'd know it anywhere. I'm sure of it. It's her. But she sounds so malicious. Evelyn? I shouted, afraid of the answer.
Yes, dearest, it's me. Welcome home. I've missed you so much.
That last sentence froze my blood. Chapter 5. Words of Reckoning. Her voice seemed to echo out of every speaker and anomaly. I swear I saw a dead body's jaw move. Could have been a trick of the light, yet I somehow doubt it. There is no way she can do that. Today was the strangest of all days, and this should not surprise me. I saw things I thought were fundamentally impossible.
What do we do now, Captain?
Rodriguez asked with fear and trepidation in her voice, which made me worry. Doc, what's our next step?
We seize control of the quantum field generator for manual manipulation, gradually dissipate quantum fields to counteract destabilization, while monitoring real-time feedback for adjustments.
Quite the plan, I must say. A bit straightforward, but simplicity is key.
She can hear us?
Oh, I see you too, dear. Don't worry. You're doing a splendid job. We need more women like you in the workplace. As a fellow woman, I'm quite proud of you.
Gee, thanks, disembodied voice. Go, girl power. How about you come out of your hidey hole and take a slug in the chest for all womankind? All this time-altering breaks in reality is really gonna destroy all the goodwill we built up over the years. Kinda brings a damp on the whole feminist movement. So, pretty please, with sugar on top, pop that pretty face of yours.
My, a woman after my own head. You will get your chance, dear. Soon, I promise. You core girls really are a treat. So focused, so full of spirit, just like my sweet ex-wife, Alex.
I don't have the impulse to get embarrassed because of all this girly talk. I asked Dr. Sinclair where we should go to shut down the experiment. He showed me the route on a hand-drawn map we made. As we were raring to go and deal with Evelyn, she interjects.
Oh, darlings, no need for such artillery. But I know how you Marines can't let go of your toys. I promise you won't be harassed by anyone. It's not like you left anyone alive either way. Just follow the route my esteemed colleague Dr. Sinclair gives you, and we shall see each other in the quantum field generator hangar. Don't keep me waiting. Toodles!
Oh, that was Dr. Parker's voice. I've never known her to be so jovial.
Also, can I ask something really quick? Just like my sweet ex-wife Alex? Captain, are we here to terminate your ex? Please say yes, because I already want to slug her for 2 minutes of conversation.
I'd rather avoid it, but it looks like it's going to happen at this point. She's not giving us a lot of options. She's going to try to stop us. Move out. Chapter 6. Acta Non Verba. We enter the quantum field generator hangar. The entire floor is riddled in equations, arranged in intricate patterns. Giant towers pulsing with unimaginable power on both sides of the major console. The hangar is full of the carved-up cultists praying to the giant machine. None of them seem to have noticed us. Some of them are too busy carving themselves with their sacred equations. Still haven't figured out how or why there are so many, even though by my count there shouldn't be anyone left in the compound. This looks more like a cultist base rather than a research facility. There are ripples in the fabric space, shining above our heads. They are beautiful in their own kind of way, shimmering with this iridescent glimmer that is completely otherworldly. I almost lost my step looking at it for too long. There she stood, like some sort of a priestess getting ready for the big ritual. Seen enough of these in my day to know what a cult congregation looks like. My Evelyn. Her lab coat is now crimson red and dripping with blood. Her sleeves are rolled up to her elbows, revealing the same crimson carvings on her flesh. They are blistering, pulsing and glowing like embers in the fire. Her beautiful face is all carved up with those damned equations. But her eyes were terrifying before. Now they are unspeakably mad. I can see them from across the room, and it sends a shiver up my spine. She's keeping eye contact with me, and I can't keep up. What the fuck did you find, Evelyn? What made you this way?
Welcome, honored guests. Welcome to our little chapel underneath the stars and ripples of the space-time continuum. I am so glad you could join us for our glorious ascension beyond the fetters of this reality, and to have such close companions with whom I've shared both toil and bed. What providence! Rearing its ugly head one last time before we banish it forever out of existence. Fate. What a miserable concept. Predetermined, but not quantifiable. It can be felt, but can't be observed. Such a cowardly, ugly, rotten, miserable thing. I'm aching to execute it, to wipe the slate clean. The very thought of it stirs me into action. Can you feel its fear? It's intoxicating. Think of it. Would you like to participate in killing a god? She's mad, stark raving mad.
Dr. Parker, please come to your senses. This isn't you.
Sinclair started screaming.
You dare to call me mad? What peculiar insolence. Big enough to challenge me, but not large enough to stand in defiance of cruel universal forces like entropy, fate, and even time. The fabric of time is fragile, and our every step sends ripples through its intricate weave. Was it not what you said to these loyal Marine Corps dogs? How pitiful. An ant who regards the puddle as an unconquerable ocean can never strive to see the world, let alone the galaxy, in its true scale and magnificence. Cackles Evelyn, fully succumbing to her madness. Chapter 7. Horresco Referens. But before we proceed with the festivities, sacrifices must be made for progress to occur. All of a sudden, she disappeared. Before I can react, I hear gurgling sounds from my left. I turn to see what happened. I see Rodriguez holding her throat, blood pouring profusely from the gaping maw Evelyn made with a scalpel she was hiding in her lab coat. I only caught a glimmer of it as she proceeded to stab Dr. Sinclair's eyes out. I can barely move in time. She is so damn quick. I can barely track her movements. How did she even manage to think that fast? I got my rifle up in time to shoot, and Kai's head was already detached from his neck. Evelyn snatches the rifle with ease from my hands and tosses it aside. I reach for my sidearm. It's already gone. She grabs me by the neck and lifts me like I weigh nothing. She carries me to the main console of the time experiment. Come with me now, my love. Let's go kill a god together. I promise it's gonna be fun. Evelyn laughs hideously with a venomous smile. Now I know equations, functions, and mathematical numbers above the standard number of slugs within a plasma rifle magazine confuse you. So I made things easy for you in a way. This way you have a fighting chance of shutting down the experiment. If you succeed, no harm, no foul, and my experiment perishes. But you make a mistake, and we begin our marvelous journey together outside the chains of reality's fundamental laws. Sounds like a deal, right? Not like you have much of a choice. Who knows? Maybe you can put in the correct sequence and rewind time to the moment you arrived. Maybe you can save your allies if you don't lead them here. Maybe you can travel back even more and stop me from even thinking about this grand gamble of mine. We can have our life back. Time is your oyster. All you have to do is choose. Before me lay the console, a puzzle of buttons, each bearing cryptic symbols. The key to shutting down this temporal nightmare. Evelyn's final enigma. I studied them, an intricate dance of possibilities waiting for a decisive move. I have to think fast. Button 1, the enigma symbol. The labyrinthine symbol beckoned, a testament to Evelyn's attempt to navigate the temporal pathways. It seemed like the logical starting point, the first step in a sequence that might lead to salvation. Yet there was a nagging doubt, a whisper that the true solution lay elsewhere. Button 2, the quantum paradox symbol. Entangled particles promised both chaos and resolution. A calculated risk, a second step in the sequence that might align with the Veil's twisted logic. My gut told me it was part of the correct path, but a lingering hesitation held me back. Button 3, the nexus symbol. The convergence of timelines, the heart of the experiment. This symbolized the final step, the nexus where the fractured threads could intertwine. It felt like the culmination, the logical conclusion to a carefully orchestrated sequence. Yet my mind betrayed me. I couldn't shake the fear that Evelyn had orchestrated this as a trap. The symbols seemed to blur, a mocking dance that clouded my judgment.
In a moment of irrational decision, I pressed the Nexus symbol first, skipping the Enigma and the quantum paradox. The room shuddered, and the temporal energies surged in response. Panic crept in me as the consequences of my impulsive choice became apparent. The console flickered, and a sequence that defied logic unfolded. The Nexus symbol, without the proper precursor steps, unleashed a chaotic resonance that reverberated through the installation. Evelyn grabbed my hand in celebration.
That's the correct one, my darling. Congratulations to us both. Now we will dance eternity together. Free from entropy, free from fate, free from consequence, free from any God's will. We have our own dimension all to ourselves.
Chapter 8. Repetitio est mater dolorum. I can't give up. My pulse races as I tear through the twisted corridors, determined to escape the clutches of time experiment. Maddened scientists lurk around every corner, and reality itself warps in response to my presence. The exit appears within reach, a shimmering light at the end of this nightmarish maze. But just as hope kindles in my chest, a blinding flash erases my surroundings. I find myself back at the console, the symbols mocking my futile attempt at liberation. Evelyn revels in her sadistic game, denying me the solace of freedom as time thrusts me back to the moment where my life took the darkest turn. Desperation fuels my attempt to reach out to a future version of myself, an entity that might possess the wisdom to navigate the Veil's traps. Messages and coordinates litter the installation, each one a plea for guidance. Yet, with cruel irony, the messages lead only to moments within the time loop. The future versions I long to contact remain elusive, their guidance forever out of reach. The Veil delights in thwarting my attempts to break free, rendering my communication with the future a haunting reminder of my perpetual entrapment. Chapter 9. Ad infinitum, ad nauseam, ad insanium. Evelyn dances around me, laughing joyously. I put a slug in her head. She comes back. I rip her arms and legs off. She comes back. I cut her tongue off, and she comes back. Can't stand the laughing. It's driving me insane. I take her head and hide it. She comes back. Everywhere I go, she is there. Can't shake her. No way out of this. I'm not seeing a way out. I always go back to that stupid button. Why didn't I shoot her when I had the chance? Why didn't I nuke this place from orbit? I would have never landed in this mess. Buttons, buttons, buttons. And Evelyn's face grinning from the shadows of each symbol. Enigma, paradox, nexus. They morph into Evelyn's laughter. Her presence a ghostly specter that refuses to be banished. I press, I run, I scream, but she returns. A haunting refrain in the twisted symphony of the loop. In the corridors, Evelyn's silhouette twists and contorts, merging with the shadows. She is the very fabric of the darkness that clings to my mind. Faces become her mask. Voices become her whispers. And the laughter, it echoes with her malicious delight. The time loop, a stage where Evelyn performs a macabre dance. Her laughter, the haunting melody that reverberates through my unraveling sanity. Escape is a futile dance, a waltz where Evelyn leads, her silhouette casting a looming shadow over each turn. The buttons, once my tormentors, now bear her face, a grotesque parody that mocks my every move. Enigma, paradox, nexus. Evelyn's namesake, etched into the very core of my delirium. I speak, I beg, I plead for reprieve, but the words are woven into Evelyn's laughter, a mocking response that resonates through the distorted corridors. Communication, once a desperate attempt to bridge the gap, becomes a conduit for Evelyn's malevolent whispers. Faces contort into her likeness, their expressions a sinister mime of her own. The madness, the relentless madness, is Evelyn's creation, a concoction brewed in the cauldron of the Veil's twisted design. I press the buttons, and she returns with a vengeance, her laughter drowning out reason. Time, a treacherous river, carries me back to the moment where Evelyn's influence twists the threads of my unraveling thoughts. Buttons, buttons, buttons. And Evelyn's laughter becomes the pulse that synchronizes with the malevolent heartbeat of time and space. Enigma, paradox, nexus. Evelyn's namesake. Her essence interwoven with the very fabric of the Veil's design. I run, I press, I plead. But she returns. An indomitable force that refuses to be exorcised from the corridors of my tormented mind. The buttons, once my keys to madness, are now instruments of Evelyn's torment. And no matter how I dance through the distorted corridors, her laughter echoes. An eternal refrain in the symphony of my perpetual descent into madness. I've seen enough hellscapes in my lifetime to make me cry. I've filled entire oceans with blood, both mine and my enemies. But for some new reason, it bothers me. I enjoy it too much. I've always been able to detach and do what needs to be done. Now I can't detach and simply enjoy myself. Captain Alex Reaper Mercer is what they used to call me. Always hated those ridiculous names, even as a mortal. As for the humans, it turns out there isn't much mental difference between me and a fully mad person driven past the point of derangement. Fact is, if you see my face in the installation, it's already too late. Look at me, talking like a human again. Hey, sci-fi horror fans, it's Carrie Drovlik. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to smash that like button. A huge shout out to all our official members. We truly appreciate your support. Craving another scary tale? Click that video on your screen. Until next time, everyone. And remember, stay cosmic.